Good evening and welcome to the Disney Discord podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Graham, and I'm joined tonight by
Bernardo from the Main Street News. Welcome, everyone.
what an exciting time! What an exciting time it is to be looking at Disney and Disneyland Paris. There's so much to unpack, but we're going to try and have a quick show tonight, aren't we?
Yes, we'll try to. We never know how these things go, and we'll see. We'll see.
So tonight we're going to cover the November event, which has happened at Disneyland Paris, which was teased out over this last week. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, Bernardo?
Yes, absolutely. So, this next November 24th, Disneyland Paris will be hosting a press event dedicated only to Disney Adventure World. So, it's not official, but the likelihood of finally a opening date announcement is there. It's quite likely to finally be the case. So I think it's something that we definitely need to look out for. We know we're trying to get someone inside from here in the Discord, but I'm not sure if we're gonna be succeeding on that front. But either way, it's going to be a very important date to remember and look out for. Also,
Explain it.
some other
Oh,
announcements
sorry.
might happen, non-related to the opening date. Obviously, it's a large press event with only a few handful of inside ears inside. So, yeah, I expect something big from the nighttime spectacular. We know nothing about it actually, and that will be a topic I'm sure you'll be very happy to talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, so there's a lot to unpack, and I'm very looking forward to it.
So, to clarify some things, this is the first sort of indication we've got that the land is about to be ready for previews and cast and press and such, because they've now invited around, what was it? It was about 12 people from Inside Ears have been invited. They'll pick, I think, 9 of them, and then there's about 3 more that are, in a raffle.
Yeah,
So
it's
we are in
something like that.
we're in the raffle, but I mean, Inside Ears is about 400 people, so it's a very, very slim chance. It's about 1 in 100. But if that does happen, we'll be delighted to be there and bring whatever news we can. However, typically on these things, they give you an insight, but they typically don't let you take photos or videos. So you don't you
You're there, but you're
it,
you're not able to share anything. Yeah.
yeah, you're kind of there in sort of body, but you're not allowed to really steal anything. However, given that they're reserving some of the spaces, I imagine that we're going to get to share things, because the only reason that you'd pick people specifically is if you needed to make sure certain big pages were there to make sure the coverage goes out.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
so
Because earlier this April, during the usual traditional April 12th event for Inside Ears, a lot of people were also chosen to go into the Disney Adventure World area and have a hard hat tour of the Disney Adventure World area. So it's like they've already done that phase of here we'll pick a few of you and here's a gift so you can come but please don't share anything. So we're beyond that phase now. So this is like they must be uh starting to pick up all the marketing and stuff to really go in force with this. So yeah, I think it'll be overly shared on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere.
it's terribly exciting. Disney's Adventure World, they've pulled the Walt Disney Studios sign down now. So if you go outside the park, it no longer says Walt Disney Studios. So I'd imagine the rebranding is about to take place. So, I mean, I personally think that we'll probably see it rebranded to Disney's Adventure World, at least on the exterior of the building, by the end of the year. And
Mhm.
I think that we're going to start to see the first little drips of merch entering the stream, because it takes a long time for merch to kind of go from concept art to delivery. And we made a lot of fun of the name, and we've made a lot of fun of the new logo as being pretty, bland and
Yeah.
generic. And but I think they've had a bit of time to go away and think about that. So I think we're going to start to see some really interesting content for Disney Adventure World, and merch is the number one way that they will start dripping this to us. And people,
Actually, Now that you mention it, I saw earlier today an image of there's a very old design in Disneyland Paris merchandise from T-shirts, sweatshirts, backpacks. That's like it's like Disneyland Paris, and then there's a few logos of both parks, like Disneyland Park, and then with Space Mountain, and then Walt Disney Studios. So they actually removed the one that said that had the Eiffel Tower saying Walt Disney Studios, and they've put Frozen on it. So I think that's actually the first bit of merch targeted to Disney Adventure World that we've ever seen. So you're right. It's starting to slowly but surely making its way into the shelves. So yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
this is what happens. So merch takes, you know, they do massive runs of things, and then they typically, unless it sells very well, don't go back and do it again. So they will already have had the first sort of stuff already in flow, because, you know, as much as you want to say all the merch should come out on opening day, it typically doesn't. It typically, if you look at the launches of like Epcot and you look at Animal Kingdom, and you know, if you look at them, you can see the merch starts to drip in, and they start to, you know, the opening party, and they start to do previews on the merch. And so it's kind of interesting because Disney's Adventure World already exists. The park that you're going to walk into already exists. It is just Walt Disney Studios being renamed. And you know, they say the official rebranding is when they open Frozen, but I think they'll be very separate things. I think officially they'll maybe not send out the press release saying it's now been rebranded, but it takes a
Yeah.
long time to update. It takes ages to update all the receipts, to change over all the bins that say Walt Disney Studios. It takes ages to change the cast members' jackets, for example. So
Hmm. And
it
it's
takes a
not like
while, and
we've it's not like they haven't done already some changes to the park, like Disney, the whole world premiere area that's completely new and part of Disney Adventure World. Yet you can walk in, and you must walk in. There's no other way into the park, so it's already there. Um,
it's also not a
but yeah,
secret. We
no,
already know what
absolutely,
the name's going to be. So it's not,
yeah.
you know, if they were holding that, you know, if that information wasn't already known, I could understand them not wanting to do the merch. But you know, we all know what the park's going to be called, so there's no advantage to delaying and costing themselves more. And one thing
Hmm.
that you know about the Walt Disney Company is where there's an ability to sell merch and where there's an ability to stack shelves with merch, they will do so. They are not going to go, oh, we're changing the name.
Yeah,
Let's let the shelves go empty. That's just not going to happen.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so this November event, I think they'll also share the first looks, as they usually do, of the cast member costumes, some merch items, food possibly. So there's a lot to reveal, and they enjoy doing these reveals, you know. So yeah, there's truly a lot, because this is a big project. I mean, my last video was completely only about that, just how huge it actually is for Disneyland Paris. Because if we look at the history of the resort, this is like the very first big expansion since the opening of Walt Disney Studios. In terms of size, I think it's actually bigger. So yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. So actually, there's one thing I want to ask you, because you were there on the opening of Ratatouille, right?
Yes.
So the Ratatouille opening, it took like the previews, the press previews, the soft openings. It was like only a couple of days, like a week maybe, something like that.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. I think it was about a week, maybe 10 days before we got the Insiders preview.
So, and that included soft openings and all. I don't remember seeing anything from
So
soft openings before
the
that.
press, yeah. So the press preview, they invited a few pages, not many, and they invited Bob Iger was there, and the actual press were there, and they had a, you know, they had a big event, and they had Linguini and stuff up and down stage, and they had a show, and you know, they had all that sort of thing. And that went on about 10 days before they done the Insiders preview. And then they invited all the insiders. It wasn't even a selection, it was literally every insider was invited. And we went to the Hotel New York, and we were moved into the conference room, and we got to hear from two of the Imagineers who designed Ratatouille from end to end, and they regaled us with the sort of process from, designing it and delivering it in Disneyland Paris, and how a lot of it was handcrafted, and a lot of it was brand new technology. You've got to remember, this was the first time that they had put the trackless ride vehicles into a 3D motion thing, so they were
Mhm.
very happy about this process they had undergone. I think it was the first. I
Yeah, I
think it was that.
think so. I don't see any other possible. Yeah, I think so.
This
I
technology go
yeah.
on. This technology was the R&D and was the basis of Star Wars: Rise of the Resistance. And this was them, and it's kind of interesting now looking back at how excited they were for the technology. And I mean, Ratatouille was cool, and for its time, it was a really nice attraction, and it still is. I mean, it takes the longest wait time in that park quite often, and one of the interesting things about it is at the time I think they were very excited because I think they will have known what they were working on next with the same technology.
Yeah,
And
from
you know,
Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, the Rise of the Resistance. Yeah, there's a lot of rides that now use the trackless technology.
so I think they were very excited about it. So they done that. We were in a conference room, and then we all got taken to the ride. We were supposed to take a picture outside, but I'm actually missing from the picture because I didn't understand in French that I was to stand still. So instead, me and there was a page on Twitter that some people may follow, which was Cafe Fantasia, and me and Cafe Fantasia ran ahead and were on the ride before everyone else. So I was one of the first inside
You
ears
just
on the ride because I
you
was.
just wandered off into the
Yeah, I
ride.
was. Yeah, I was on the ride. They took us through the queue. They told us how the queue worked. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the stars above the restaurant, they go out and they go in, and there's a whole sequence if you're in the queue long enough that you can watch. So it goes from a 3-star to a 4-star restaurant, I think, or something like that. And then you went on the ride, and then there was a debrief off the ride, and then we all got dinner in Bistro Chez Remy, and we all got to try that, and we got to try all the desserts, and it was really nice. And I made
Okay,
some lovely friends that time. And
perfect.
then, quite literally, once we were done dinner, we were asked if we wanted to ride it again, and I think most of us rode it a couple of times. And by this point, I think it was about 6:30 p.m. The park was closing at 8, if I remember properly, and that was the first public opening. They just removed the barriers, and the public were allowed in that night. And then the next day, unannounced, it opened again about. It didn't open with the park, but opened about 12 noon.
Okay.
So, I mean, it is done with. Everybody who thinks there's going to be these huge queues and everything, Disneyland Paris are really, really sneaky, and it just opens randomly. And
Yeah, exactly.
you
So
know, they
that's kind of what I was trying to go to because
It didn't. If your
it was
next
like a
question is when did it
yeah,
officially open, it didn't actually officially open for about another 3 weeks after that. So it
really
it was in
okay.
so yeah.
So
So
the
they didn't add
previews were
it to
before
the
everything else. Basically, the previews were before soft openings. They were before anything else. Basically.
correct, and then there was a
Hmm.
soft opening for about 2 weeks, and then even though it had been open all along, they announced that it had opened on like this other day, um, which was really funny. Um, and we've got in the chat here, we've got GPX Brent who's put in that I think I was there the next day that you mentioned. We were bummed about missing the opening day by a few weeks, but when we arrived in the Studios Park, we noticed there were no more walls and we were allowed in, and that's true. They quite literally had announced the date was going to be, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I think it was in June. So say it was June 15th. They announced like June 15th, and it
Hmm.
actually opened right at the end of April. So sorry, the end of
Yeah.
May.
Okay.
So it was a phenomenal amount of time. So interestingly, for everyone who's really, really, one thing to Disney are very aware of is people book holidays and book travel to be there for it. And everyone who is kind of off the belief that because I think they've said it's opening in spring next year. Is it or
Yes,
summer? What
exactly.
one have they put?
That's spring next year. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've put spring 2026. I don't think it's going to be late spring. I mean, I'm not telling you to go and book a trip based on this advice because I don't want to be responsible, but they're very good at managing expectation. If they say it's going to be ready by spring, it's probably going to be open quite a bit in advance of spring. The other thing is when they're opening a new attraction, it's difficult because they have to balance like they don't know if it's going to be a big busy attraction. Everything's busy for the first couple of weeks, but they don't know if it's going to be busy going on. Ratatouille is a small land, a very small land. It had one shop, which actually didn't open with the land. The Chez Marianne did not open until about half a year later.
Oh
So the
well.
shop didn't open. The shop didn't open with the land. The little food huts weren't there either.
Yep.
For
Yep.
the They weren't there. The fountain, if I remember properly, didn't work properly when it opened. But they opened the restaurant, they opened the ride, which sounds like a lot, but actually it's only one unit
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they were operating. So they done that. But this is different. This is very different because you're about to open this huge expansion that, as much as they think they've worked it out, people are going to have, one of the funny things about Epcot that they didn't anticipate is there's two ways to go around the Epcot Lagoon, and one is to go left via Mexico, and then there's right via I think starting Canada,
Hmm.
and apparently 90% of guests go right and go via Canada and don't go, and they had always imagined that it was going to be roughly a 50-50 split, but apparently no,
Yeah.
everybody bends
Everybody.
right and goes the Canadian way. So what they found is that when they were designing attractions and when they were staffing it, that there could be as much as an hour's difference between Mexico getting busy and Canada being busy because of the
Yeah.
way people went round Epcot. So I think obviously we've only got Frozen, which is going to be at the north of the lake just
Yeah.
now, but I think it's a really interesting point for when they're staffing shops and toilets and when they're emptying bins and when they're doing all this
Yeah, all these little things. It's going to take a while to get it everything right. That so
And
yeah.
that's where you've got to watch, because if you're only selling food at one cart and it's on the wrong side of the lake, for example, people won't bump into it. And I think there's a good bit there that I think is really interesting, which is because it's so big. I think they're going to need a lot longer to kind of
Yeah,
bed
yeah,
this in and think, how do we staff this? How do we, everybody takes for granted, go to any other theme park in Europe or go into any other theme park in America, and you're going to find that people have, taken Sharpies and vandalized rides and vandalized
yeah.
walls. There's broken benches. There's trash on the ground. Some of the paint. I'm not saying Disneyland Paris has always been perfect at maintenance. However, you know, if you suddenly think they have to learn where are the spots they're not covering, where do they need somebody to be checking, where gets vandalized, where do people sit on a fence that can't take their weight and breaks, like a lot to learn. So I think one of the things with this size of, and you hit on it in your video, that this is a huge, brand new, biggest ever expansion to Disneyland Paris. And it comes
Mhm.
down, I think, to they've got so much to learn that I think it'll be open far in advance.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. And I mean, we see already just how complete everything looks. I mean, they're putting all the seats, the seating everywhere, all around the lake, and in front of the parachute drop, which is the attraction where you can actually see everything. So there's benches are in place. They have all the trash cans ready to be out there also. I mean, it's like they're just putting up the finishing touches. But then it's spring, and I mean, the idea is that it's gonna open around April 12th, or at least that'll be the main celebration, grand opening of Disney Adventure World. But that's still a long way until then. So as you say, I think in March, maybe they're gonna start letting people in, something like that. But yeah, I really don't want to make any big assumptions. So don't go buy into what I'm saying as much as going actually booking something. But now that we already talked about the Ratatouille, I think we could actually cover a little bit of work that's happening on Ratatouille. This October, they've started the biggest refurbishment to the attraction that they've ever done, since 2014. New there's several new props being added. We still don't know if they're adding any props to the ride itself. It's possible, but at the same time, I'm not sure how that is going to work with the screens and everything else, because it's not easy to just come and add something new to a ride that's existing like this for 10 plus years. The 2D is here to stay. New projectors are being brought in with hopefully a little bit brighter in some scenes, some enhancing going on also. But yeah, so this is just one other project that they're doing before the opening of Disney Adventure World. So it's like they're getting everything ready to truly go into this as well as they can, and it's just refreshing to see something like this happen at Disneyland Paris. And we have here Brent on. I think the initial rumor mentioned props in the ride itself. I imagine some props around the screens themselves to hide the edges. Yes, that would probably be one of the better things to do, because when you remove the
I was
3D
doing
glasses, it becomes hard to not see the edges and not look up and see the roof. So yeah, that's the ceiling actually. So that would be perfect, honestly.
I was doing some research into this because we all thought they might have been removing the 3D because people were feeling a bit sick, because 3D is supposed to be viewed with you sitting in a fixed perspective, and a projector effectively throws two different videos, and it blocks one eye at a time, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, I've done some digging on this and why 3D may have been removed from the ride, and this may be something that we see going forward in more parks. And I mean, people don't really like 3D to begin with. However, apparently, it is not recommended for under 14-year-olds to be experiencing 3D because it's pretty poor for your eyesight development. And that's why, if you remember the Nintendo 3DS, it had a switch off mode that an adult could, turn off the
Mm-hmm.
3D on it, so that children weren't glued to a 3D screen. And I think that, as we go forward, 3D was the reason people get a headache with 3D is because your head is genuinely perceiving something that's not true and isn't there. And I think that probably as research goes on, we're going to find it's probably never been that good for your eyesight to be being
Yeah,
tricked by
yeah, yeah.
projectors. So I think that they're probably just a little bit ahead of the curve. And then when you look at some of the new, and it's not 3D, however, when you look at some of the new solutions like VR and AR, I think the sort of 3D that we've been experiencing so far is going to seem really, really dated really, really quickly. So I think there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
probably a bit more of the other thing is they run it in 2D, and I don't think I think when it's obviously broken down and gone into 2D mode, I don't think anybody's complained. And in fact, they've probably had better feedback because they're now rolling out the 2D version to America, aren't they? So
Yes, they are exactly. The 2D is going to be not updated, but it's going to change to 2D. I think in next month, sometime next month, and also some new the props are also starting to make their way there, I think. So
it's really
yeah,
it's really
basically
interesting.
treatment. Yeah.
The original Star Wars was often mocked on re-release for DVD because it was upscaled so badly. And people really liked the old film grain and liked the old sort of VHS quality of Star Wars because it didn't let the visual effects stand out so badly. And I think they went back and redid the visuals in Star Wars. However, I think in general, people always thought the original release was better and the older formats were better because, it hid a multitude of sins. And I don't know that, Pixar's 3D animations for a ride while you're bumbling about in a little cart are probably the best. And I think you're coming off a headache and they're not the best animations. And quite often you're off angle from perfect. So, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think,
they developed that pinching method they love to talk about. But with the 3D, it's always it's a bit messy. It's
yeah.
hard to do. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So
So yeah,
there's that.
that's
Moving
that.
on from that though, we have seen, we're we and The next two things that you've got on our agenda. By the way, Bernardo has an agenda for us. Everybody should give him a little round of applause because we don't often do this with an agenda. You've got drone testing in California. And you've got nighttime spectacular in Disney's Adventure World. Now, I don't think these are separate items. I think there are two theories I think that hold weight. Some people think that. So what we've seen in California at a ranch is Disney have been testing a drone show. And in this drone show, if you've not seen the footage, you can jump on Instagram and see it, and you can see it on TikTok. And on this footage, we can see the big manta thing from Moana, or from something. I have no idea personally.
It is
And we can
Moana,
see
yeah.
it, and we can see it, and that's the headline visual we were given for Disney's Adventure World. Now, there's two theories here. Number one is you could say, well, they already had the 3D model mocked up in drones, so they've flung that up in the sky because it's a good, it's a good example of what we're doing, which holds some weight in itself, and it has nothing to do with what follows. And then you can add in the fact that we know that Fantasmic is being updated to have more Moana sequences in it, and we can also infer from Fantasmic that Fantasmic is the only nighttime entertainment show that has lasted as long as it has, and it's the only
Hmm.
nighttime entertainment show that continually pulls in a 95% satisfaction rating. And we can pull in the fact that Fantasmic is the only nighttime entertainment show that was so good that in both the parks that Fantasmic operated in, they built, they've developed, maybe less or so in California, but they've developed almost arenas and staging so that you can see the show better. So we could do that. Now, I've always been an advocate from 2022 and 2023. In fact, it was even 2021 where I'm whittering on about why the next nighttime show in Walt Disney Studios will be Fantasmic. And I think I've caveated it before by saying I don't think the first show will be Fantasmic, but I believe that is the goal.
Somewhere
And
along the road, Fantasmic is coming. So that's not as
yeah,
like opening day, but some years from now, they'll
I
just give up and put on Fantasmic.
well the thing is, Fantasmic in itself is a
Mm.
draw for Disney nerds worldwide. It is a show that will drag people to the park. It's a bit like when the Main Street Electrical Parade comes out. If they said we're putting the Main Street Electrical Parade down Main Street in Disneyland Paris, people would attend to see that. And we know that because they've done it with the drone show, and Disneyland Paris has got this lovely tinkering ability where they're like, we're going to look at these drones and we're going to do old shows that everybody loves and we're going to throw them up in the sky. And they've now done it with Wishes. They've done sequences at Hallow Wishes. One of the really interesting things about Disneyland Paris is they, unlike the American parks, sometimes just take random elements from a show and throw it out. So the Mickey's Boo to You parade is like a highlight of the Magic Kingdom. It's gate kept by a special hard ticket event. It is meticulously maintained by the Disney company to never leak into anything else. Then Disneyland Paris attached it to a water show in the middle of the day. So we know
Hmm.
that their adherence to the old standard isn't always there. And what we've seen is this drone show that's being tested in California is very deliberately Fantasmic. So they've got the mirror sequences, they've got the genie sequences, they've got the dragon drone sequence, which is obviously known as Murphy in Fantasmic in the States. We know the dragon is broken in Disneyland California, so there's an idea there could be a drone dragon in California. One of the problems
Hmm.
might be that they're not terribly allowed to fly drones in California. They also quite frequently cancel the fireworks, the actual fireworks at the castle. Like they have the highest cancellation rate for fireworks in any Disney park, which is Disney's California, which is the original resort in California, and that's why they developed World of Color. And that's why they run Fantasmic, because they quite often can't run the high level pyro in California because of the wind. So again, when you take that into account, and you take into account, I mean, I don't know how many people know this, but the Disneyland in California is quite literally on the Santa Ana freeway. It's literally just, like if you can see it from the
Yeah, yeah.
park, you can hear, if they turned the music down, you would hear it. It's enclosed on all sides. So again, I don't know. So I don't think that this is going to California. So the next question comes in: is it going to Disney World, where it would absolutely be fine because they own all the airspace and all the surrounding space? Again, I don't think so because they have a very compact stage. It's done really well. It's all integrated, and I think some drones would be good, and I think Disney are always looking to cut the pyro bill, so there could be some drones. Then the one that I think is most likely is that this could be for the cruise ships because the cruise
Yes,
ships have a problem.
I
They
thought
have the
about that
problem.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, they have the problem that they can't use too much pyro because then somebody's like, "Oh, you're in distress," and you have to be reasonably far away from the coast because people don't really take it very well if you're in, the port of
Yeah.
Sydney and you start setting off fireworks. So, I think there's a good possibility that this drone show could be Fantasmic at sea, and I think
And
that
there's a new boat coming that's very big.
the
I don't know,
adventure.
the Disney Adventure. Yeah, exactly. Disney Adventure. That's next year, I think, right?
Yeah,
So
so
I
it's
mean,
in
I
final
think
fit out now. Yeah.
that's a very good guess. I think.
So
Yeah.
I hate to admit this because the trope I always portray on our Discord server, which if you're listening along and have never been in the Discord server, you should absolutely join. The trope is that I've always said Fantasmic is coming. I'm still convinced that Fantasmic, in some sense, everybody laughed when I said the Main Street Electrical Parade is coming, and yet we got the drone show. And I was in the end, it wasn't exactly how I imagined it was going to be. I thought there was going to be a small cavalcade version of the Electrical Parade, and then they sort
Still
of flew.
possible. Still possible to come someday.
Oh, it's still possible, but I think they've done the electrical parade. The other thing is the Disney's Main Street Electrical Parade can quite literally be put up the same night. Like they only need the drone, they hit play, and then off it goes. Um,
Yep.
so we've got that, but I'm convinced that this version of Fantasmic with the drones, and if you remember previously, we were talking about, would could they put the drones up over the lake, and I think that's possible. One of the huge problems and one of the big negatives to this would be, can they do it? Because drones, and I commented on this myself when I went to Disney World and they do the Disney Spring Show. Drones, when you're off
Yep.
angle, are often not very good. So you can lose the image quite easily by being off angle. However,
Yep.
I think Disneyland Paris have a little trick here. So nobody says, for example, there only needs to be one mirror. There's no reason they couldn't do, you know, a mirror in the north and a mirror in the south. So where you're standing late, you're always looking forward.
Yep.
And then secondly, there doesn't just have to be one dragon, and you could do certain things like have the dragon pop up on drones and then suddenly it goes black and instead it's projected on the rear side of the Tower of Terror, or they've got a really big open space where they can do really cool things and make this, play. And I think that's why we've seen these. They're almost like LED video drones rather than bright light
Yeah,
drones.
it's
And
like
I
an
think that
actual video screen. It's like an actual video screen, but on the sky.
now the
And that's a
interesting
part of
thing
the
is,
testing.
if
Yeah.
let's assume it isn't just a single LED and they've got a really high density, but let's instead assume these are bigger drones that are carrying a sort of video panel. And I wonder if they've got this little, I don't know, 2 inches by 2 inches video panel or 5 inches by 5 inches video panel. And I don't know if that's not to counter the off center effect, because while, a 3D drone might not work, if you put a video in the sky, which hasn't been done, and we know they love doing new things, it wouldn't matter if you were off angle, you could totally see it. So I think there's a really good possibility we're getting Fantasmic. I really think, and I know everybody's rolling their eyes and I don't really care. But I'm convinced this is us going through the mirror, and Fantasmic at some point, if not for launch, is coming to that park. You've got to remember that nobody cares about some daft Moana show. People want Fantasmic. That I'm convinced that's coming. It sells things. People wear the hat. This is entirely possible. And we had the rumors that they had bought the Tokyo. They had bought the Tokyo floats in the water, and we know they've got floats in the water because we've seen them, and they've got a video wall attached to it. It looks like. I am convinced, absolutely convinced. And do you know what? I'm happy to be wrong on this because I've gone on about it that long. And it doesn't really matter. I don't really care. I see in the comments Dan saying we're not getting it. I have no hope. Don't you worry about it, Dan. I have enough hope for everyone. So now that I've ranted about that, Bernardo, if you could tell everybody why I'm wrong.
I mean, I'm not gonna say you're wrong because then if Fantasmic does come, you're not gonna shut up about it for like the rest of my life. So I'm not gonna say anything. But that I personally don't think that's the case. I think they're gonna do something new. You know, Disneyland Paris loves doing new shows and new stuff and brag about how new everything is. So yeah, maybe it's gonna have some, beats and pieces of phantasmic like concepts. I could see that. Maybe like a storyline similar to Phantasmic, or a scene sequence that can be, it's like reminiscent of Phantasmic. But I personally don't think that it's going to be Mickey going into all kinds of Disney movies and Disney stories and then fighting off the villains, um, like we've seen in Phantasmic. Now, with the drones, we had like a big chat today here on the Discord about them. It's still unclear how they're gonna work because you could possibly, I could see the drones be launched from one of the platforms in the water, one of the barges. But
Yep.
it could also be that they're launched from somewhere backstage. And if that's the case, it'll be very hard to bring the drones from backstage into the center of the lake. So you'd have to go over people and guests, and that's not happening. That's a big no-no.
I
So
don't think they will though. I think the drones will be outside the periphery of the lake, and I think you're going to have a set in front and a set behind because you've got the perfect setup for it. Because you've got the full behind the lake that hasn't, that has just been built, but you also have this wonderful large area where there's currently the outside theatre where they're doing Alice in Wonderland. And that area
yep.
could, that's a nice big area that you could throw some drones up and it'd be
Yeah,
totally safe
that's
there.
yeah, absolutely. And you have that would be like very from one side to the other, so it'll cut right through the lake. One behind Frozen, bit off center, and then one launch location from the Theater of the Stars. Yeah, that completely possible and plausible to think that.
You could
But
also, I mean, I'm
yeah,
looking at a map just now. You
yeah.
know, the airspace there from the airspace. Someone's tagged the Theatre Stars Star Wars, by the way. Um, I don't know why. On Apple Maps, and the Theatre Stars is quite literally tagged Star Wars. But you've actually got you've got the Theatre of the Stars area. Then you've got a service road that goes round. And then you've got the Marvel's Adventure Campus backstage where, the roller coaster is for Flight Force. And
Yeah.
you've got a huge area there. And if I remember rightly, there's a drone hut going there on one of the plans. So that seems imminently that is the bit of space. Um,
The drone hut I think is going on the other side though. I think it's the drone batteries, the pyro, all it's going to be like very close together, closer
is there not?
to the backstage water area they have off to the side of Frozen. There's like five little rooms. That's everything's been
Sorry, this
like
sorry, this
storage
is
is going to
this
be
is the
there, I
drone.
think.
This is the drone hut they use currently.
Oh, okay. So for Power the Night and those
Yes,
shows
so
on
there's a
Tower of
little
Terror.
there's
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
I see.
that drone hut is located to the left side. If you were, I don't know, that doesn't make any sense. It's located to what would be the cars side of Theatre of the Stars. So
I
it's
see.
already
Okay.
there. And they already use
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
location for sending. So they already use that for putting drones up. Now we're used to standing in front of Tower of Terror and looking at the drones, but I now think that at the lake, if you were standing around the frozen side of the lake, you would be looking towards Tower of Terror, and it would still be the same launch platform for
Mm-hmm.
doing. And I'm convinced that they're going to do like a mirror image thing because then everybody standing at one side of the lake is going to get a great view, and everybody standing at the other side is going to get a great view.
To be frank, to be completely frank, the area in front of Frozen that's closer to the lake, so you see all the paths and all the areas for people to stand in for the show. The area closer to Frozen is one of the shorter and smaller ones. So it could be that they don't want people to stand there, which could possibly cut off access to Frozen, to Arendelle, in and out. So maybe they're
That's
just
a
gonna
good
have
point.
like off to the sides and in the front. So if you're seeing from Frozen, giving the space needed for the drones behind the Arendelle mountains and houses. So yeah, I'm not sure if you have those two sides of the drones. It would be a great way to make sure everyone could see them. But to be honest, I think it can work fine with just one, taking into consideration that whole crowd flow
No,
nightmare that usually happens at Disneyland
they
Paris.
they can also project on the back of the Tower of Terror without any issues.
Yeah,
It's a
that's true. And
huge,
I've
huge
always
blank
thought
canvas.
that's a perfect B mode. So if there's no drones, just project the drones onto Tower of Terror. It's like the perfect B mode for that location.
Yeah. So I think we're good there. You don't think it'll be Fantasmic. I think it'll be
Uh,
Fantasmic. For the record, I don't think
just
it'll be
one little
Fantasmic in month one.
one final point to for the drones. Brent actually brought something very interesting, and that's the viewing area. So the paid viewing area from Regal View and that whole space there, it's going to be closed off. That like it's clearly pointing to Frozen. So the drones, if there is only one drone location, that would be it, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but
you're
we'll see, we'll
definitely if you're.
see.
Um, there was another thing I was wondering as well. They really liked. Do you remember when they done Disney Light Years and it was called something else in America? It was Glow. No, it was Glow with the Show in Paris. It was Light Years in America,
Yes,
or maybe it was the other
yes.
way around. I can't. One of them, but they were the same thing. I'm
I used to have one of
convinced.
those.
I'm convinced that that in some form is coming back, and I think that that's going to be the time when Disneyland Paris switches to using some sort of magic band or something, because the amount of concerts like Coldplay and the ones that the Taylor Swift done it and
Hmm.
the Las Vegas Dome are now doing it, and they're printing, they can now do shapes and they can do colors and letters and stuff in crowds, and they can
Well,
really,
the
you can.
already existing in Disney parks, because the new magic bands that you charge, they have those lights and they interact with the
Yeah,
shows. So
I think that's coming.
I still think that magic bands would be a huge success in Paris, and Disney would totally make a lot of money with them. But yeah, I'd love to see that. I would love to see magic
I think
bands come to Paris.
I, I think if you were going to do it, you'd need a big compelling reason to, invest in it. And I think, just as a guess, that this
Hmm.
this is one of the big things that you would maybe do it for. One of the reasons that Magic Band didn't come to Paris is in France it's illegal to, record the movements of people without their expresses opt-in consent. In America, it's not.
Yes.
So they monitor how often you go to the toilet and how many times you visit a food stall and did you wait in the queue and how long did you wait and stuff. They're not allowed to do that in Paris, and so one of the interesting things is that the technology to understand the human behavior is not allowed to be applied at that scale in Europe. So you
Yeah.
know that's obviously why they've not done it there. Um, Moving on before we get stuck on that, but you're 100% right. It is the right time. We've got the attendance report from Tia, and this was heavily delayed and heavily kind of anticipated because we're now out of COVID and we've moved beyond the COVID years, and this is the sort of how are the parks doing properly. But there's a couple of caveats in there for Disneyland Paris, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very surprised to see how well the last year was for attendance in DLP. I was expecting a much larger drop, seeing just how the summer Olympics in Paris messed with everything, because we saw very low queue lines, we saw huge discounts, we saw truly a lot of stuff that pointed at it being a bad year for Disneyland Paris, and yet it didn't really drop that much.
See,
So
this is where I find it
yeah,
really difficult. Disneyland Paris decided to get really greedy once they knew the Olympics were coming and threw the prices up massively. And they got rid of their very popular annual pass program and decided, haha, we can't have that. We're, tripling the price, and we're, getting rid of all that riffraff, and all these high-paying Olympic people are going to be make up the difference. And then it didn't happen, and we've seen them scramble because then they started offering really, really cheap hotel and ticket deals, and they started offering really cheap tickets. And then we had family tickets came back, and friends tickets came back, and then even the third-party resellers like Attraction Tickets suddenly had, I think me and Ketology were talking one day, ages and ages and ages ago, about how you could go to Disneyland Paris on some days for, I think it was like £39 or €42. And that was,
yeah.
sure, that was one park, but that was, half the price of the headline price at that point, which was about €85, I think it was. So
So yeah, it's
you could
huge
get in for almost
discount.
half price. So they done that to
Yeah.
themselves. I mean, France warned everybody. Oh, by the way, the Olympics are going to be a nightmare, so be prepared. And people just did not travel. So we had that, and it was, we know how that worked out because Disneyland Paris ultimately had the quietest summer it's ever had. I think they are completely wrong to still have the reservation system in place because they would be fine without it, other than, I don't know, 2 weeks of the year. I don't know if it's worth it for those 2 weeks of the year. But the other big problem they've got is when you have a massive expansion coming, there's a lot of people that will delay their trip.
Exactly, and that was yet another thing that pointed to it being a very slow year for the LP, and this year also. But we've seen just how many sold out days and long queues and high prices there have been during 2025 also. So I don't think as many people are delaying their trip as I thought there would be.
Or maybe they are.
Maybe next year, I think in like January, February, March of next year, a lot of people are just going to think, well, might as well wait a couple of months and make sure it's open. But from 2024 and 2025, I don't think we've it's going to be make that big of a difference, to be honest.
Well, I look at the Disneyland Hotel as the barometer because there's only 600 rooms, and it typically, the cheapest you can get it any other year is £550
Yeah.
per night. And the cheapest that I have seen it now is there's a £475 night available. So there's definitely a limited, in January especially, there seems to be less people going, that they've dipped the price a little bit more. And we've heard
Uh-huh.
that, we've heard that they're exploring the ability for, in certain hotels, people to pay to receive club level benefits rather than booking a club level room. They can then add on the benefits, such as,
Hmm.
the Golden Forest Club and stuff like that. So yeah, Disneyland Paris are definitely exercising all the tricks they can to generate some money. But I think the toughest period for them now is that people will start postponing trips. And Acelian in the chat has said once opening is announced, we'll see people delay their trip probably. Now, here's the interesting thing. They've announced the opening is spring, so that decision's already been taken by people. However, for the last minute people, and the people who renew their annual passes early on in the year, and the people who are there in January and February are typically quite late bookers because it's cheap till very late. And I would guarantee that they're going to open Disney's Adventure World a lot earlier and probably swoop in and pick those people up and call it a soft opening or a beta launch or something, just to avoid
Yeah, yeah, no,
committing.
it's very possible, very possible. So yeah, that's it
So
on the numbers. Both Disneyland Park and Walt Disney Studios dropped 1.8%. Disneyland Park saw just over 10 million guests, and Walt Disney Studios saw nearly so 5.5 million guests, more or less. So yeah, those are some solid numbers. I'm really excited to see how the numbers evolve next year, though.
one thing
It's
I just want to throw one caveat out though.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bob Iger, when questioned on this on the earnings call said that they're not accurate numbers when he was asked about Walt Disney World in response to COVID. That these are,
Hmm.
you know, these are guesses. These are not provided by Disney. These are guesses that are taken by, you know, um, data that they do share. Which is, I think, what he's trying to alliterate to there is that they only provide the revenue, and then I think Tia go back from it and divide it by, you know, how much the average spend is, and then they can work out roughly how many million attended a park. But I think it's really important here to remember that when Disney
Yeah, these are
is
not like
these are
solid,
no
completely solid
these
numbers. Yeah.
yeah, and one thing, and Disney, you know, can help clarify on these things and can obviously be very vague when it wants to be. But one of the interesting things that I think Disney will do is they will suppress the numbers just now for this year, next year, to then say, look at this investment we've done. We've done this $2 billion investment, and already, you know, in
Yeah,
2026
yeah.
we've blown all the numbers out the water, and it's the busiest it's ever been. And, you know, we added 5 million new people due to our investment, and how great are we, and blah blah blah. So I would like to add the caveat that they have a
Yeah.
huge incentive right now to be downplaying the, you know, the success of the numbers.
No, no,
So
absolutely,
just
absolutely.
take it with a tiny pinch of salt, because, you know, they definitely have an incentive to say that the investment was the best thing they've ever done. And that sort of, you know, does really well for them on Wall Street. And, you know, nobody's looking to Disneyland Paris in 25 and 24 and 25 to be bumper years. You know, nobody's looking for that. And, you know, from a stock point of view, saying that
And
you've
yet, I
invested
mean,
2 billion and it
and
gave you
yet
5 million new
it
guests
was
is.
23 was supposedly, according to the numbers, the most attended year in the history of the resort. So even with everything that's coming
Which isn't a
later,
surprise, because in 23 they were getting a row for Disney Plus not being very good, remember?
yeah, yeah, true. That's true. Yeah,
So
it's a good
you've got to
point.
remember the Disney cut. A lot of people forget this. Disney actually does not exist to tell good stories, and Disney does not exist actually to provide you entertainment. It exists for one goal: it must make money. It must make profit. And and
Yeah.
the interesting thing is when the shareholders ask the questions, there may be some Disney fans that are shareholders. However, the shareholders are really asking one question: for the amount of money you spent on a project, how much money did you get back? And,
Yep.
you know, when you start to look through that as the lens, and the lens is what did they spend and what did they make, it starts to make a lot more sense. You know, a lot of people were upset, you know, Lounge Lightspeed got deleted out of Disneyland Paris without a single tweet saying it was closing. And that, you know, that happened because they invested in that product and it obviously did not give them the return they expected. And, you know, they may have been trialing a concept for later to see how many people would do it if they'd done it inside, or they may have a better idea. I'm not saying it's done for good. However, everything Disneyland Paris do is to make money. And
I mean,
the
that's the
way they
business,
report
right?
that to Wall Street, Wall Street, and, you know, Wall Street and, you know, the world's share markets are very narrow-minded. They really don't care about multi-year, 10-year plans. They care that this quarter made more money than last quarter, and next quarter should hopefully make more money than this quarter. And one of the things that Disney has to do really carefully when it does these things, when it says we're spending 2 billion, they need to be able to say we've spent 2 billion and look at how many million people came extra. So
Yeah,
we're going to spend
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, the storytelling is they're a storytelling company, and they are very good at telling stories. So the stock and shares price has to be rooted in fact. And, you know, one of the interesting things I always think they do is when they open these massive new expansions, so they open these new parks, they always take that opportunity to refine the model that they're using to count how many people are in the park, which I always think, because in theory, we should see upon the opening of Disney's Adventure World, Disneyland Park should massively decrease in visitors, because the visitor numbers in Disneyland are, and all Disney's are apparently taken from the first turnstile you go through each day. And I think
Yep.
for a significant period of time, people are not going to go in Disneyland park, and which we should rename it the
First.
Magic Kingdom, but
Hmm.
we'll argue about that another day. They are going to go to Disney's Adventure World, and I don't think the stats are going to show a castle park being beat by its cousin or its sister or whatever. And I think that is probably going to be the case in Disneyland Paris for a little while, because Disneyland
Yeah,
itself
yeah.
has
No,
had no new
that's
attractions for so long that this is,
very,
like
very
your
long.
video said, this is the big, amazing thing that's coming. And I think they're going to
Hmm.
probably manipulate all the figures.
Yeah, yeah. So the one part goes up, the other goes down. So at the end, I think the best thing to do is to combine both parks and see how the number evolves. So
Yeah.
even if someone goes into studios or Adventure World first, at the end of the day, it's one person in both parks or
Yeah.
just one of them. It doesn't care. Doesn't matter. But yeah, very
So
interesting
anyway,
insight there.
unless you have anything else that's critical, our half an hour podcast is now at an hour. Hail
Yeah.
Lunar Mission once again.
No, I don't have anything. I'm sorry. No, I don't have anything
Well,
else to add.
well, there we go. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us live. This is the Disney Discord podcast. I have been Graham, and I've been joined by Bernardo. Thank you, and good night.
See you later.